Hello everybody, and welcome to Season 2 of the Twilight Zone. Today it is Season 2, Episode 1, King 9 Will Not Return, written by Rod Serling and starring Robert Cummings as James Embry. So, before I get into the episode, I would like to bring up a few things. First of all, Season 2 brought a couple changes. First of all, the more known and classic Twilight Zone theme was first introduced in this episode. Season 1 used a different, musical score. And also now Rod Serling's opening narrations would have him actually appear on the screen instead of us just hearing his voice, which I really liked because it adds another dimension to the episodes. Another thing of note, I try not to compare episodes too much. I try and take them on their own. But sometimes I feel it's necessary to make a comparison, to make different points throughout the review. And it's interesting that this episode is very similar to the premiere episode, which was also obviously the first episode of the season, Where Is Everybody? Unfortunately, it's not quite as effective, but that doesn't mean that this episode is bad. It has its own redeeming values and also a couple of problems. So I'll get into the episode. We start with Rod Serling's intro, and we go to the main character, James Embry, and we are told that his plane went down, it crashed, we see him on the ground, and he gets up wondering where his crew is. And another thing I want to point out, we do get a lot of voiceover narration, which is actually an improvement from Where Is Everybody, where it was all just the character talking to us out loud. The voiceover narration seems to fit better, so that is a good thing. So he's trying to figure out what's going on, and he spends some time wondering where the others are. Eventually he goes back into the ship, and there's static on the radio. And, he tries to make contact, but he's not getting anything. And little by little, he seems to be flipping out more and more. I like the way it's built up. And he says he needs to keep cool and keep logical. So then he goes back outside, and he starts to flip out even more as he's not figuring things out. And then he winds up seeing one of his crewmen in a plane, but when he gets closer, the man disappears, so he starts freaking out even more. And that's already about the halfway point of the episode. Now, here's where the problems with the episode comes in. If it seems like I'm skipping a lot of stuff and just jumping around, I'm really not. A lot of this episode is just our lead character walking around talking to himself, both out loud and through narration, and it takes too long for everything to happen. I like the slow build, but there's not enough different variations of things happening in between to make it completely work. So while it's somewhat effective, it's not completely effective. So we go to the second half of the episode, and we see him on the radio again, and he's getting nobody or nothing. So he concludes he must be having hallucinations, or maybe he's, like drunk in a bar somewhere, or maybe he's sleeping and it's all a dream. It's interesting that he thinks that might be what's going on. So he tries to rationalize the crewman that he saw. He's getting more and more upset. And then he sees a sign that says, one of the crewmen passed away. So he says he's sorry for that. And then he sees, jet planes up above, but those would be from a different time period. So now he's freaking out even more because he really doesn't understand what's going on. And these are all nice hints to the end of the episode, to what's happening. So we get more talking out loud. Like I said, this is very padded. And, all of a sudden, he starts laughing. He says this must be all an illusion. He starts laughing, and then the laughing, after a little bit of time, turns into screaming because he sees his crew members appear and disappear right before him. I think it's pretty easy to figure out what's going on at this point, in my opinion. So, he says nothing is real, and he falls to the ground. And from there, we transition to a hospital where we find out he's had a psychological disturbance from something he saw in the paper. And this was all a dream. The old "it's all a dream." Now, I don't know, how cliched that was at this time period in the early 60s. So I'll give it a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. But from a modern standard, it doesn't totally hold up. The All a Dream thing has been done so many times I couldn't even count them. So, but there is a little bit of a twist which saves this slightly, which is that there is at least a reason for the All a Dream, which is that this was a mission he was supposed to go on and he never did, and the plane crashed. So he was spared of that, and he feels guilt over not having gone. So, the doctors tell him he'll be okay. The psychologist tells the doctor, I want to see him in a few days. But then there's another twist, and this is what really saved the episode for me, is the fact that they find sand in his boots, meaning maybe he really did go back. We don't really know for sure. The ending really worked for me. Unfortunately, everything takes just so long to happen. It takes forever. This is probably the slowest moving episode to this point. And that's not always bad. I like a slow build, but in this case, there's just not enough script or interesting material. I think setting it in the scene they did hurt it too. Like in Where Is Everybody, you were in a town, and you could do a lot of things. You could go to a lot of different places. Here, you're basically just in a desert with a plane. There's only so much you can really do. There's not a lot of sets or anything. But it's a very well shot episode with good atmosphere. I think Robert Cummings' performance is fine. You could say he's a little over the top, but maybe he needed to do that to compensate for the lack of, the amount of story that was here. So overall, this is a mixed bag for me, and I give King 9 Will Not Return a 2.5 out of 5. 2.5 out of 5. Thanks for watching.